I'm Jennifer, here with Handi Quilter Ambassador Angela Walters. And we're talking about long arm machine quilting and getting your tension right. The key to great machine quilting is having that tension balanced. But how do you do that?
It's actually not as hard as you might think. But before we start talking about that, let's talk about what the anatomy of a stitch or what it looks like. Because once you figure out how it's supposed to look, then that can help you fix it when it doesn't look that way. So if you think about the top thread and the bottom thread coming together, they form a loop, or where they connect. In perfect tension, that loop or that point is in the quilt sandwich. So when you have bad tension, it's when that point is above the quilt or below.
I think I have the perfect example of that. Now, when I'm practicing on the long arm machine, I try to do a lot of different stitches and just doing it on a whole cloth quilt. And my secret has been to use the same thread weight, but different colors in the needle and in the bobbin, so that I can see if I have my tension adjusted right. So sometimes I think I'm going along just fine. I've got my purple thread in the needle, and then when I take it out of the machine and turn it over, I'm sometimes disappointed because I see purple on the back and I shouldn't, because I had a different color thread. Now, I wouldn't quilt that way, but how do I avoid this?
That's a good point. And I do have some tips that I like to follow to help prevent tension problems. So one of the things I like to do is always use the same type of thread. So I find a kind of thread that works great in my machine and I just stick with it. So I'll just switch out the colors depending on what I need for the quilt. Now that's just my personal preference. I know some people like to try different kinds. I also, when I'm quilting a real quilt, I'll keep the colors the same as well. And so that will prevent this from showing up as much. Because it's hard to ask a machine that's moving at such a high rate, moving in different directions, to keep it perfect. So using the same color will help. But this looks like it was a tension problem as well.
All right, so where do we start?
Well, first, one thing I always do is keep the bobbin set. That way I know if there's any tension problems, I just have to adjust the top thread. So usually what I'll do, and you can buy a gauge that will help you see if it's the right tension on your bobbin, but I just do a little trick where I hold it, and I'll dangle it from the thread, and what it should do is just slightly fall. See how it's not suspended?
Right.
And so every time I use a bobbin with this thread, no matter the color, it's gonna be set. So I just know that I need to adjust the top. Now some people like to use thicker threads. And you can see right here how the tension will come into play. See how it just hangs?
Right,
that means it's too tight and you'll have bad tension with that. So you'll want to adjust it. And if you are a fan of using a bunch of different types of thread, you might want to invest in an extra bobbin case so you don't have to keep adjusting it on the little screw right there.
Right, and there's a little set screw on the bobbin, and you would just adjust that until you got that sort of balanced in your hand, pulling out smooth.
And once you get that set, then you know if you're having tension trouble, it's because of the top tension. And so what I would need to do is just loosen or tighten this depending on the tension. So if you think about your quilt sandwich, if you're seeing the bottom thread come up to the top, it means your top is too tight because it's pulling that connection point above the quilt. Or vice versa, if you're seeing the top thread through the bottom, it means that your top tension is too loose.
And that was my problem on this sample. I was seeing my top thread coming through to the bottom, and I was too loose on top. So how would I adjust that?
Well, the great thing about these, it has a little wheel right here. So to tighten it, you just turn it clockwise, and to loosen it, you just turn it counterclockwise. You don't have to do a whole bunch of adjusting, just a little bit either way, and just keep tweaking it until you find the happy spot.
Terrific. Quilting should be a tension-free experience and one that you can enjoy. So try these troubleshooting tips, get that perfectly balanced stitch, and you'll be quilting for hours.